in a second-hand set of dimensions, in an astral plane that was never meant to fly. Somewhere in darkest Ankh-Morpork, a sinister plot is about to unfold. Dragon! Good! Dragon! Good! Dragon! Good! Dragon! Good!
Yesterday I made a show about how games tend to be not that well adapted into movies. And sort of continuing on this idea, how well are books adapted into games? Well, if you look at The Witcher, quite well you'd say. If you look at Stalker, semi-ish. Interestingly made. If you look at the Wheel of Time, well, you can't because you can't buy the Wheel of Time anywhere anymore. But it was an okay game. But how about Discworld? There's been about 4 games based on this book series, made by the late and great Terry Pratchett, who sadly passed away last year, yet was able to write over 40 books in this very unique series. What made Discworld unique, you may ask? Well, this was a fantasy series, angled to be comedic, to be amusing, and yet it always had something more. It always had a weight to it, a depth that maybe you couldn't have predicted just by going through the first few pages. There is a lot of philosophy in these books. There are stories that are all about politics but made in a way that doesn't make them seem boring. They're spoofs, they're parodies, and yet they always seem like something more. Not just something to laugh at, but something that will actually make you think about certain subjects, about certain ideas. This kind of book series would have been fantastic as the basis for a series of adventure games. And for the most part, that's what the Discworld games were. The first one was made for ZX Spectrum and didn't do that well, but the second one, simply named Discworld, did manage to have some success, quite a lot of it actually, and it had some big names in it. I mean, the main character, Rincewind, was voiced by Eric Idle. Now, Rincewind is a very common character in the Discworld novels, especially in the earlier books. Rincewind is a wizard, a very incompetent wizard, stupid, kinda lazy, unable to learn a single spell, though to his credit, it wasn't because he was really the worst wizard ever. For you see, he had in his mind stuck a spell so powerful that every other spell he tried to learn ran away in terror. Like I said, there's depth there. There's no one you could actually call a one-note character. Everything is shaded, everything is well made. And the Discworld game, well, let's start with the way it looks. It looks superb. If you look at the cover of the novels, they have a style similar to this game. Which makes sense because this one was released in 1995 after 18 books had already been published in this series. Yes, 18 books by 1995. The scenery looked great, it looked very fantastic, very magical, the characters were well made. Honestly, I like the way they looked in this game more than the sequel, because in the sequel they were bigger. And, well, this was before hand-drawn animation was actually good. Well, no. Broken Sword was released in 96, so I have no idea why the characters looked so janky in the second one. Then again, I have seen the animated series based on certain Discworld novels, and those looked even worse. But Discworld 1 looked fantastic and it sounded amazing. It's the kind of game that could really get you hooked on this book series. Well, the books themselves do that well enough on their own, so the game could be more recommended to people that know the source material. Namely, in this case, it was based off the book Guards Guards, in which a dragon shows up in the great and putrid city of Ankh-Morpork. But there are a few problems with this game. There are problems that always kept me from fully enjoying it properly. 2 problems, mostly. Well, 3, if you think about it a bit more. Firstly is the gameplay. Remember how people used to say, oh, adventure games make no sense, the puzzles are just random as hell and no one knows what to do. And you think to yourself, well, yeah, maybe that goat puzzle in Broken Sword wasn't so logical, but hey, the rest of the game was very logical, very to the point. Yeah, Discworld is the reason why people say that adventure games have no sense. Because it doesn't. The game has no sense. The puzzles are insane. People have described it as being dream logic. Even the sequel, you travel back in time to the first game and it still has the old graphics, and the character talks to himself and acknowledges that whoever made the game, Teeny Weeny Games and Perfect in Production in this case, published by Psygnosis, treated the logic like some sort of enemy, an alien entity that must be purged. Puzzles just do not make sense in this game for the most part. There are a few that, yeah, are logical, completely okay, a lot of them will not be. And that sort of takes you out a bit of the experience because you can fully enjoy talking to all the characters and having a laugh with them. If you have to find out how you're gonna get, what was it, a robe from someone? No, you had to take the robe off someone? Well, you have to do a lot of stupid things in this game that make no sense. Use a walkthrough is what I'm saying. Use a walkthrough and enjoy the world, enjoy the characters. And again, it especially helps if you're already familiar with the books, because then you can really enjoy the characters. You can, hey look, it's Nanny Ogg talking to the patrician. Now, if I had not read the Witches series as well, I would have no idea who Nanny Ogg is, or why she's such a great character, and why would I want to talk to her. So it's a game that tries to introduce you to the world that maybe doesn't do that good of a job. Well, as good of a job as it could do. It gives you the basics, but it doesn't explore the world enough. Doesn't explore the characters enough. And that's one of its other failings. I like Rincewind. Great character, love the books he was in. If you haven't read any of them, I especially recommend you start with, well, The Color of Magic, its direct sequel Lies Fantastic, and some of the other ones, and especially read The Last Hero. The Last Hero is probably the shortest one, and it's amazing, and I honestly couldn't have foreseen how amazing it was based on the game, because when I started playing, I had not read any of the Discworld novels. I liked the idea of the world. I liked how death would just come along and try to convince the character to commit suicide. It was funny, and it's funny in the books as well when it happens, in a completely different book than Guards Guards. For you see, Rincewind wasn't the main character in Guards Guards, it was mostly Sam Vimes, and I'd say Carrot as well. Now Sam Vimes doesn't show up, I believe, at all in the Discworld game, which is a shame because this is a man that could have used his own game. Leader of the City Watch, well, the Night Watch, the one that no one likes, and an alcoholic. Because he has to be a cop in a city where crime is illegal, and it drives him insane. And then comes Carrot, someone who wants to be a cop but doesn't really understand the concept of crime being legal and just tears everything apart. Like, there's a thieves guild in Ankh-Morpork that's legal. They have a monthly quota of robbing people. Carrot arrests every one of them. He tries to arrest a dragon. And it's not because he's stupid or naive. Well, yeah, he's a bit naive, but he believes firmly in the law. He's a very good character, and Sam Vimes is as well, and they're just glanced over in this game. They're not there. Well, yeah, Carrot is. He has 2 lines because he's guarding with, I believe, Sergeant Colon, one of the walls, but they really don't do much. And as a consequence, that other bad thing happens that makes this game not be as good as it could be. That depth isn't there. The game is funny. It's funny as hell. Oh my god, it's amusing. But the books were more than amusing. Guards Guards was a book about politics. It was about how easily people can be manipulated to do the bidding of a very ambitious person who has no problem with walking over corpses to become the new ruler of the city. And no, it's not a dragon. The dragon becomes a ruler by sheer coincidence. Amusing coincidence, but still. And that kind of depth isn't in the game. It doesn't show as much. It's not so prevalent. As a comedy, yeah, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it as a comedy. Just remember to use a walkthrough. But there is certain pathos missing from it. There's a certain weight that's not there. Like a vines and carrot shaped hole in it. And that's kind of valid for the second game as well. Though I'd like to mention I haven't played Discworld Noir, which isn't based on any particular book. It's sandwiched into someplace between two of them. Though it's not a story made by Terry Pratchett, it's made by the game developers. And it's, well, I haven't played it, so can't really say that much about it. And like I've said in this week's Top 7, this is a game you can't buy anymore. It's not anywhere. Now, I'm not exactly sure who owns the rights to this game. If the publisher had the rights to the games, then they should be, I believe that's Sony Computer Entertainment, because they snapped up Psygnosis a long time ago and renamed it and then closed it down. Or they could be with the Pratchett estate. There are games that should be republished. It should be available to anyone to play. Because what they lack in weight and in depth, they sure make up in presentation, in humor, in just letting you explore the Discworld. You know what would be fun? You know who actually could do justice completely to this book series? Rhianna Pratchett, if you're listening to this, probably not. How about convincing CD Projekt to do a Discworld open world game like The Witcher 3? Because you know those people are gonna be very faithful to the books and you've seen that they can do amazing work. Then again, I also want CD Projekt to make an open world RPG out of Fables because what they did at Telltale just wasn't enough. So in closing, play Discworld with a walkthrough, preferably if you don't want to tear your hair out like I did, and read the books, because the books are fantastic. If you enjoyed this show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Or, if you thought it was horrible, then share it with your enemies and make them suffer. We shall be your weapon of vengeance. But if you liked what you saw, you could, I don't know, maybe donate, because basically YouTube is horrible at revenue, by using the link in the description, or just buy my book. It's a fantasy book about, well, a lot of stuff. I guarantee it won't suck, and if it does suck, you can find me here and complain about it.